Hello and welcome. You've encountered a video that's part of a playlist on the books of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous literature. However, you may not like big books or 12 steps and 12 traditions, so in this video we're going to talk about a relatively small booklet actually, called Living Sober. I'm going to tell you what it is good for, and what it do right here in this video. Really quickly, if you're new here, my name is James. I'm a grateful recovering addict and alcoholic. I drank and used drugs for 20 years recklessly, and I've been recovering for almost 4 years. I post videos here every week on this channel. Feel free to subscribe, like and share to get this message out there. Share with us your experience, strength, and hope down in the comments, and check out the resources in the drop-down description. Now let's get into Living Sober. Living Sober is a book that differentiates itself from the big book and the 12 steps and 12 traditions in a way that it wasn't written by Bill W. and Dr. Bob. It was written by you and I, the Alcoholics Anonymous members. It addresses topics on living sober. We have put down the drink, we put the plug in the jug, and we have questions. What do I say and do at a drinking party? Should I keep liquor in the house? How do I explain to people why I'm not drinking? What about sex? What about sex? It has questions like that, which is why I love it. What I'm going to do in this video is briefly read a little bit about the intro on what this book is, how to use it. Then I'm going to look up comments from you, the viewer, and address them in this book. Just going to read one paragraph under about that title right here in the beginning. Starts off, however, we learned some of the facts about the illness called alcoholism. Our opinions shifted. Our eyes had been opened to the fact that apparently millions of people have the disease of alcoholism. Medical science does not explain its cause, but medical experts on alcoholism assure us that any drinking at all leads to trouble for the alcoholic or problem drinker. Our experience overwhelmingly confirms this. Again, as with a lot of AA books, AA literature, this has relatable factor. I can relate immediately, as I'm sure you can if you pick any of these books up, to the words in its pages. One of the things that they touch on in using this book is take what you like, leave what you don't. The same with the big book, the same with all of the AA literature. Some of these were written 80 years ago. Take what is useful, leave what is not. Recovery, I'm sure you have learned by now, or you are about to learn, and if you don't know, recovery is a very personalized plan. Keep an open mind. Take what you can relate to, take what's useful, leave what's not. Right here on page 2 it says, AA as a fellowship does not formally endorse nor recommend for all alcoholics every line of action included here, but each practice mentioned has proven useful to some members and may be helpful to you. So it's a resource. Check it out. I put the links to all the books I'm covering in this playlist. The playlist is called AA Books, check them out. I put the links to this book and other books down in the drop-down description. You gotta hit that drop-down arrow to get to the description. You can buy them there. Here in the front, it's like the table of contents. Some tips on living sober, using this booklet, live and let live, remembering your last drunk, reading the AA message. These are all topics that they discuss. These are all writers that have experience, strength, and hope in sobriety. So it's a relatable book on actual life in sobriety. So without further ado, I'm going to read some of the comments on my previous videos that you, the viewers, left. Again, I thank you for your participation in these videos. I really appreciate the comments, the likes, the shares. I'm loving the subscriber count. Yeah, our community is forming, and I couldn't be happier. We got to get together against this hellish affliction of alcoholism and addiction, and I love each and every one of you, and I love your comments. These books can, in fact, answer any question you can throw at them, because they were written by recovering addicts and alcoholics. So like I said, I'm just going to read a comment left on one of my previous videos and then look it up in the book. This one was written by a subscriber named Dan. He writes, I've had many sober attempts in recent years, was in such a period recently when I watched my father pass away. Almost immediately I drank, and drank well. I have done so since he died, July 19th of this year. I'm sick in every way, mentally, physically, everything. Grief is understandable, but I know drinking will not help. It hasn't, but I still go ahead. I've been to AA in the past, but in all honesty, it frightens me to just let go and go for it. Unsure of what to do here. Enjoy your content all the same. James, Dan. Dan, thanks for sharing with us, and my heart goes out to you. I've been hopeless and restless and irritable and discontent and cannot escape the bottle, and one is too many, 1,000's not enough. I'm sure you've heard this. But in this one, Dan, you write that you've been to AA in the past, but in all honesty, it frightens you and to let go and go for it. You then write, a bit lost at the moment. I guess AA and the community there will help me focus. God knows I need to do something or I'll feel real deep. Thanks again, man. So in the book, Dan, I found on page 76, going to AA meetings. Long before this booklet was even thought of, every single idea in it and many more suggestions for living sober were learned and proved successful by hundreds of thousands of alcoholics. We did this not just by reading, but also talking to each other. At first, we mostly listened. You can easily do the same thing free and you don't have to join anything. Dan, you mentioned you don't want to make the leap. You don't have to join anything. You don't have to dedicate the rest of your life to anything. The point is, and in this, what they're suggesting here is that you just go to an AA meeting. It then goes on to say, you can be very sure that every AA member in that room deeply understands exactly how you feel because we remember vividly our own hangover miseries and how it felt the first time we ever went to an AA meeting. This is a significant point because unfortunately for you, you've experienced the death of a loved one. I'm sorry to hear that. In AA, there will be people that understand this. I know a close friend in the rooms of AA that happened to lose their son to this disease. My point is, in the rooms, they will understand everything from death to the fact that you have been drinking. Maybe you've been drinking for a month. When I went in, I'd been drinking for a long time, nonstop. I didn't have a job, I didn't have a license. My point is, in the rooms of AA is where you'll find the solution. And nobody is going to force you to commit to anything. This next comment is from a guy named Stephen M. He writes, I'm 27 and very serious about giving up the drinking lifestyle. I start to feel shame and guilt now after every session, which this used to never be the case. Stephen, I can totally relate about the guilt and shame, and that's a never-ending spiral of feel guilty and shameful and go drink because of it, then feel guilty and shameful, and it's a never-ending spiral. I did find some relative information here on the bottom of page 9 of the Living Sober book. We did not suffer alcoholism just because we enjoyed it. After all, we did not deliberately, maliciously set out to do the things we were later ashamed of. We did them against our better judgment and instinct because we were really sick and didn't even know it. And this whole page is actually about the disease of alcoholism and how it's a disease. Right above that, to summarize, we remember we have an incurable, potentially fatal ailment called alcoholism, and instead of persisting in drinking, we prefer to figure it out and use enjoyable ways of living without alcohol. We need not be ashamed that we have a disease. It is no disgrace. No one knows exactly why some people become alcoholics while others don't. It isn't our fault. We did not want to become alcoholics. We did not try to get this illness. So Stephen, every single AA member, every single alcoholic and addict has felt this way. I can pretty much guarantee it, and if not, I can tell you that I've felt this way. And then I came to grips with the fact that it's a disease, and make no mistake about it, it is a disease. Some people will argue to the death about the definition of disease, but I'm gonna tell you right now, I was powerless over it in the way diabetics are powerless over their sugar intake, insulin or whatever, and I chose not to argue over it to my death. It just is, and I acknowledged it. So we don't have to be ashamed of it anymore. It's an affliction. It is an illness, but it is, in my opinion, our responsibility to address our illness and do whatever it takes to treat it. Stephen also wrote on one of my other videos, this one is my crash, don't drink and drive, the story of my crash. I'll post those videos up here in this lowercase I. But he also wrote, after hearing the story about me crashing and spending 3 months in a coma, the reason you survived may have been to inspire and help, and I believe you are achieving this. And thank you, Stephen. Doing the next right thing can make us proud of ourselves and make us feel good about and be acknowledged, pat ourselves on the back. So the reason I thank you for that comment, Stephen, is because right there in the contents, 16, being good to yourself. And you can go on to read all about that. Thank you, Stephen. I like to think the same thing, and my mother would agree with both of us. This is the reason I survived, is to help others. So the final comment that I looked up, it was from Charlie. This one is on my Big Book video, part of this playlist that I made. He writes, 6 months sober thanks to the 12-step program. Thank you for this video. And I said, go Charlie P, you go, man. Well, on page 82 of Living Sober booklet, trying the 12 steps. When all else fails, said the old country doctor, follow directions. We have not talked about the 12 steps offered by AA as a program of recovery from alcoholism, and they are not going to be listed or explained here because anyone curious about them can find them elsewhere. Well, don't have to be an ass about it. Their origin is striking, however. In 1935, two men met in Akron, Ohio. Both of them, Bob and Bill, were then considered hopeless drunkards, which seemed shameful to those who had known them. I'm not here to read the book word for word, but we do know now that any comment that I go to it is very likely that any comment I go to in my previous videos can be looked up in this book, the Big Book, the books I cover in this series, this playlist. But it's a very relatable book, short, sweet. I think in here, in the beginning, it mentions that it's not to be read all the way through. It's more as like a reference guide, like right here on page 26, availing yourself of a sponsor. Why am I so angry and resentful all the time? Page 37, watching out for anger and resentments. Resentment is said to be the #1 offender of the alcoholic. Going to AA meetings. Why do I have trouble dragging my ass to an AA meeting? Well, Living Sober describes it. This is experience, strength, and hope from members of Alcoholics Anonymous. It is the closest thing to a open discussion meeting in a book form that so far I've found. Question of the day: when is your sobriety date? How long have you been sober? And do you find the questions addressed in the Living Sober book, can you relate to them? Do you have the same questions? Do you think they should write another one? That's like 3 or 4 questions, but you get the drift. I'm super stoked about this channel, to tell you the truth, and I wake up and I just wonder how I'm gonna help and what am I gonna do my next video on. Well, I'm doing this series, this playlist, books, check them out. I'm gonna just add whatever book reports, AA literature of course. Hey, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell down there and like and share to get this message out there. And until next week, keep it clean, keep it real, and keep doing this damn thing. Peace. Like the Christian God or the, Southern Baptist God.